You're in your self-proclaimed era of detachment, yet you're stepping into a full rebrand. What did you have to do to get there?
Really, the biggest thing we can do in business is just ask why more. Why do I want to do this? Why do I want to pursue that idea? Why would this make sense for me? Business is actually very simple. What it takes to grow a business is simple. It's just my one-to-one clients who are most successful, they don't have any secret. A lot of people decide something's failed before they've given it the consistency of action to succeed.
Alice Benham is a business strategist. She's a facilitator, a best-selling author, a speaker, and a retreat host. And since launching her business, becoming an accidental entrepreneur aged just 16 years old, she's helped tens of thousands of businesses to achieve their big visions with realistic daily action through her signature AB method. Alice has just taken off her 5th August in a row, and she has grown her business with a brand new refresh for her brand, and also growing her business to a place where she is supported by a secure team. I am really interested to understand how somebody with such a wise head on relatively young shoulders has achieved all that she's achieved. Don't Work Harder is the show for entrepreneurs who are ready to catapult their business forward, because we believe it's not about working longer, harder, or smarter. It's about those braver moments. One bold move is worth 1,000 small steps. So rather than those small incremental movements that are moving you forward at a much slower pace, we're going to share with you the stories of successful entrepreneurs who've taken those big, bold steps to move them forward. This show is brought to you by Atomic, and I'm your host, Suman Randhawa, and I'm here not only to share with you the stories of entrepreneurs and the success that they've had, but you'll also walk away with the insights of what they did at that exact moment when they made that change that moved their business forward. So Alice, you are in your 5th season of having had the whole of August off.
Yes.
You're in your self-proclaimed era of detachment, yet you're stepping into a full rebrand. I guess the thing that I really would love to ask you is this a privilege of having got to a place of growth and safety in your business? Like, I love the idea of a period of detachment, but what did you have to do to get there?
I think it's both the privilege of, stability, trusting your business, building something that feels more established, more stable. I mean, past me used to think there'd be a point where I would just feel infinite stability, and however many years in, that still hasn't happened. There's still that constant feeling in business, isn't there, that, everything could go wrong. Nothing can be fully trusted.
There is, but I think not enough people are honest about it. And that's definitely one of your brand values, isn't it? Be having complete transparency.
Yeah.
So considering that, you're saying that actually this era of detachment, yet being able to step into this huge rebrand, there was a sense of confidence that's allowed you to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a trust in my business, but more so probably a trust in myself, that I've been doing this long enough and paying my bills long enough to know that, like, okay, I think I've got this. And even if I can't predict what could or might go wrong, or the curveballs coming my way, actually, I've seen enough evidence that I can trust myself to keep this business going. So I think there's definitely a sense of stability that helps you to, make those kind of decisions, step away from your business a bit, which can feel so kind of backwards.
Yeah.
But also I think what's added to that and helped that change to happen is kind of clarity and experimentation as well. If you'd said to me at the start of my business journey, at some point you're going to want to actively say no to things, step away from your business for a full month, make these decisions that actually feel quite unhelpful to business growth, I would have said, no, that's not logical. I don't want to do that. It was only through trial and error and experimentation and the clarity of what goes wrong if I don't make those kind of decisions that led me to do that. Like, I'm not interested in detaching from my business. I'm interested in the benefits for the business's growth and for me that come from that. So I could and would have never made these decisions at the start. I think it had to take that time.
So what does the term mean to you then? Because you're not detaching from your business, but it's an era of detachment. What does it allow you to do?
I think what it looks like for me is just building a sense of identity and purpose and fulfillment outside of the business, which is something that my past self didn't even know I needed to do. Like, when I first decided in 2019 it was really just born out of a place of, I don't know who I would be if I wasn't working.
Yeah.
I don't know who I am outside of, Alice Benham, entrepreneur, strategist, whatever job title I was using at the time. And so that was where it all came from, really, was just going, I don't think it's healthy to feel like me and my business are one and the same. And what I'd say I've done over the last 5 years is not completely separate them, because A, I don't think that's possible. And B, I think business growth, even in the season I'm in where I'm sustaining the growth, still takes a level of obsession and, caring a huge amount. But what I'd say is I've just started to separate the two a little bit, where I kind of now feel like I can understand Alice Benham Limited when I'm in a business capacity, and that's still very me. But then I also have this sense of identity of just Alice as an individual. And I mean, the benefits of that for the business have been unbelievable. Like I said, it feels backwards, but actually the business has grown far more in the last 5 years. And every time that I've made those kind of changes, the business has benefited, because I think I'm a better business owner having that sense of detachment. I'd say it's like a 20% detachment, maybe. I think fully detached wouldn't work for me.
And what does that look like practically then? So as I'm hearing that, I'm thinking, okay, that feels like there's definitely some boundaries in place, but it's so interesting to hear that actually this is a period of time that's been taking about 5 years.
Yeah.
But practically then, on a day-to-day, what does it mean? Does it mean not turning your laptop on before a certain time?
It feels to me like just that added layer of intentionality and a lot more of a filter between I could do something versus I actually do it. Okay. And I say all of this, the way you're describing it there, I feel like, oh my gosh, people are going to think this woman's so kind of boundaried and intentional. And I am to a degree, but there's still a huge amount of kind of flex and it feeling very human. But I think for me, it's just questioning everything a bit more.
Yeah.
There was a real kind of not breaking point, but close to breaking point last year when my first book had just been published. I'd been on this mad book tour all across the UK. I think I ended up doing over 80 different things, podcasts, workshops, events in the space of 3 weeks. And I was done by the end of it.
We were talking about energy earlier. And you don't expect something so fun to be so exhausting, but it truly must have been.
Yeah. And I did that and I realized from that, oh gosh, I've got more work to do here, where I need to learn what to say yes to and what to say no to.
Okay.
I think for me, a huge part of the detachment or just the healthier relationship with my business is learning what to say yes and no to, and not thinking just because I can do it or someone wants me to do it, I have to do it, but actually just trying to be that bit more intentional and going, okay, do I want to do this? And if I do want to do it, how, when, why? I'm still not perfect, but I think past me just kind of was rushing, saying yes to everything. And in the end built something that was successful and impactful, but definitely not sustainable and definitely not fulfilling. And I think that sustainability and fulfillment has been my big focus over the last year, especially. And it's been it's only been a year, but it's felt long.
Yeah. And it feels like intentionality is the big piece here. It's that actually, when we don't feel that sense of safety in our business is where we say yes because we think, well, it's the next money that's coming in. Whereas actually what I'm hearing is when you get to that place of trust, it's meant that you can make a decision based on, is this the best for my business? Yeah. Not just, is this a great opportunity? Is it exciting?
Yeah. Which is hard.
Yeah.
It goes against all of your natural instinct as a business owner of be scrappy, say yes, take every opportunity. That was the mode I was in for the last probably 7, 8, 9 years. And so feels counterintuitive, but I think you've got to learn through evidence. Okay, no, it does actually work out. In some ways, in some areas of the business, I still let myself be scrappy and say yes to everything. But in a lot, I've had to learn the opposite of that.
But then such is the life of being in a startup. Yeah. Actually, if we don't have that, we could call it scrappiness, we could call it agility. Yeah. It's just that ability to be able to switch.
Yes.
So what's the last thing you said no to that you could share in terms of business?
I said no to a few things yesterday because I came back to my inbox, obviously, after my month off. So there's always some fun things sitting in there. A couple of podcast recordings, a couple of brand partnerships, workshops, just a few things that, past me wouldn't have even hesitated to say yes to. But actually, when I think about my time, my energy, and also who could maybe take my place better than I could in that position, that's a big part of it as well for me, of actually, I don't have to do everything. There's a lot of other people that could have those opportunities.
And that's an amazing way to look at it. So if somebody was wanting to consider how they can make a decision, what question should we be asking ourselves when we work out, is this a yes, or is this a I'm not the best person to do this, or it's not the best opportunity for me? What question could we ask ourselves? We're going to take a short pause to hear from one of our sponsors. Sponsors help us make the best show possible. Don't Work Harder is sponsored by Constant Contact, the digital marketing platform built with small business owners in mind. With Constant Contact, you can grow your contacts list, send out more emails, organize social media and events, and simply get more done with their advanced automation tools. It's everything you need to grow your business, advance your automation, and attract more of the right customers all in one place. Visit constantcontact.com to get started. What question should we be asking ourselves when we work out, is this a yes, or is this a I'm not the best person to do this, or it's not the best opportunity for me? What question could we ask ourselves?
I think there's a few things to consider. And a lot of the time with my clients, this is my role. They'll come with like, want to do this, or I've got this. And we kind of, work it out together if it feels right. I think one thing to go with is experimentation. If I've never done something before, I'll always say yes, because it's an experiment. I don't know yet whether that could work or couldn't. I've been on enough podcasts now to be able to know what a podcast can do for the business and what timing makes sense. But if I've never done it, actually say yes, experiment, learn. You're going to learn more through action than you do through sitting and thinking. So if it's brand new, often it's a yes, in my opinion. The other things I'd then consider, if it is something you've done before, is like, look at the data. Like, has it been something that has been helpful for you before? If yes, great. There's a clear why behind it.
Yeah.
I think really the biggest thing we can do in business is just ask why more.
Yeah.
Why do I want to do this? Why do I want to pursue that idea? Why would this make sense for me? And that's where I think having a wider vision in your business is so helpful, because it becomes that North Star. If this is my vision, does this opportunity, does this idea contribute to that? And if you're 51% sure, I say go for it. I don't think you ever feel 100% certain. And I'm all for messy action and experimentation.
Yeah.
But yeah, just asking why. And then if you do it with so much more joy and intention, because you want to be there and you know why you're there.
And you're also stepping into this rebrand. So what made you think, I need to completely refresh how I'm showing up as a brand, when you had outwardly, it looked like everybody knew who Alice Benham was?
Yeah. See, it's interesting. I think the rebrand for me was a really fun example of you've got to know your business best.
Okay.
So many people told me, you don't need to rebrand. You're wasting money. Don't do it.
Did you ask them their opinion?
No. Yeah. I don't know what it is I've done, but there's a few people in my world that feel a real just open feedback loop, and I don't really care, but I find it quite interesting.
Yeah.
But I think in business, the whole point, right, is that you see a vision that people can't see, and I was probably, if I'm being honest with myself, a couple of years late with working on my branding.
Okay.
Primarily, I think because everyone would just always say, you're smashing it, it looks great, love it. And I'd be like, okay, cool, fine. Whereas actually, if I was really honest with myself, the clarity for me was that the internal didn't match the external, i.e. what my business was internally, how established it is, how legit it is, all those things. I don't think the externals match that. I think the externals let my business down.
And how did you know, Alice, then? What was the sign?
It was those small moments where, I don't know, someone would ask me to speak at an event.
Yeah.
And I would genuinely dread making my slides.
Right.
Because I knew my slides would be ugly.
Yeah.
Or I'm promoting an event or a new podcast episode, and the thought of making a graphic gives me the ick. Or someone asked me, what's your podcast? And I'm like, I don't want to tell you, because the artwork is me from 5 years ago. It's all of those. There was no big one moment. It was just all these little kind of bits of, I guess, friction.
Yeah.
Where I then just realized, like, all of this friction comes back to, I don't have the right external brand. Even, to share that I wasn't even using brand guidelines. I was just going like, well, we use a bright yellow and a black and gray and white. Like a business of my level, not that it's even really that big, but just, it wasn't good enough.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you would absolutely guide any business you were working with to ensure that that was in place. But sometimes the growth goes faster than we've caught up with. And it feels like that was kind of part of it. So that sounds like a really exciting project.
Yeah.
How much time has that taken for you to make that happen? Because we're talking about having a bit more balance in business. That sounds like a big project.
It definitely was. And it's one of the reasons that I would say, actually, I don't recommend many people invest in lots of these things on day one. I'm a big believer in starting scrappy. Like my first logo was hand drawn with a calligraphy pen and scanned into my parents' printer. And that was my first logo for years. Like I think, let it be scrappy. Let the internals grow quicker than the externals. Always upgrade the externals to match. But to add to your question of kind of time and money, it was a huge investment. Like I haven't added it up yet. Maybe I'm too scared to. I wouldn't be shocked if it's cost me over £10,000. And it definitely took probably about a quarter of my capacity, which is a huge amount of time in the working week, for about 2 months. And that was a bit of a shock to me, if I'm honest with you, because when you hire experts, my assumption, which I know when I actually think about it, is completely wrong. I'm like, well, I'm hiring people, so I won't have to do anything.
But they need your thoughts and ideas at first.
The amount of Pinterest boards I had to make, feedback, like it was amazing. And I'm so pleased with the outcome, but it was taxing. And that's another reason that I think, any investment in business, I'm actually quite a hesitant investor. I don't spend a lot of money on things like that. I'm quite careful. And that's not really because I want to be careful with money. It's because I think things like that, there's always a bigger cost to your time and your energy, and there's trade-offs. And so maybe I wouldn't have had the capacity to do it previously. And actually, now is the time because of that.
But, this was like 9 years in, essentially, you've decided to make this investment. So actually, if you were to divide that by the number of years, actually it's a really reasonable investment.
Yeah.
What is it going to allow you to do then? Or what do you hope will be the future as a result of having made the decision to make that significant rebrand? Because I'm quite interested in the fact that you also went for the visual identity rebrand in that you worked with a stylist, to look more aligned with how you wanted to show up. So talk to me a little bit about that, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd never thought about all the other pieces of the puzzle before. I'd only ever had my branding done, and my last branding before this was done in 2019, which tells you enough about how out of date all of that was. And I really realized this time there was more to it than just a logo or just a website, although those things are obviously important. And so, I worked with a stylist, but also recently worked with an interior designer on my office, because that's
I was going to ask you that,
content and all of these things that actually now I've done it, I'm like, of course, that's a big piece of the puzzle. I think the styling stuff I'd never felt comfortable to do before. Right. I think I would have never wanted to think about clothes or how I looked. And so that just came at the time it needed to. But it's really been elevation has been like my kind of word of the year across the board. And I think the biggest thing that I want to come from that is really, for me, I'd say more than anyone else, to feel really aligned, confident, and to know that everything I'm putting out there is strategic. I'm a strategist. I care about things being intentional. And for a long time, I knew that, my visuals weren't working hard for me. So I think just really having that feeling that what people see says something, and what it says is something I'm proud of, rather than me going, oh gosh, don't look at my website, I promise I'm really good at what I do.
That's such a great measure, isn't it? Where you're asked a question, you're thinking, I wouldn't want to send that.
Yeah.
Or I wouldn't feel comfortable with them seeing that. That is actually a really great measure and a really good question to ask ourselves. Talk to me a little bit about what has that strategy of growth been for you? So I'd like to break this down into 2 parts, actually. How did you work on building that confidence? And when do you know that you are ready to take your experience and teach it?
I think in answer to that first one of confidence, I just think action leads to everything, right? More clarity, more confidence, more ability. And so I think you've just got to put yourself in situations where you get the evidence back that you can do it and you've got something to bring. I never felt actually that being young or being a woman in any of those spaces was particularly difficult, but I wouldn't be shocked if that's just because I was kind of quite naive and just doing my own thing, loving working, getting my head down. I'd say when I did start to feel wobbles was when more of the growth strategy and business strategy topics came into my world.
Okay.
Marketing felt very comfortable to me. As I said, I think it's a skill that actually you learn best by doing.
Yeah.
But suddenly starting to be speaking about how to grow a business and your business model, your operations, your finances, goal setting, that's when those moments of like, okay, who am I? And not who am I like, who am I to do this? But actually just like, well, who am I to do this? Where does this knowledge come from? How do I improve this knowledge? Are there little courses or qualifications that would help me here? Because I think it's amazing these days that you can run a business based on learned knowledge, lived experience. You don't need, degrees. But I also think we've got to take all of that with real carefulness and make sure that we don't just go straight from, well, I know it, so people can pay me for it. I think there needs to be more of a gap between those two things so that we are good service providers and we look after people and people get, what it is that they're paying for.
So alongside then the lived experience of you doing it for yourself and your own businesses, how much has working with coaches been something that you have committed to? Has that been a part of your journey?
I've actually never had a typical coach, I don't think. There's someone I work with a couple of times over the last few years that's more of a kind of career coach, and they kind of hear me. It feels like business therapy. I think the biggest investments I've made with people has been personal therapy.
Right. Okay.
Team, freelancers. I guess probably because I think I'm someone that I learn best by doing. If someone tries to tell me do this, there's a little rebellious part of me that thinks, okay, well, I'm going to do the opposite of that. Or I don't want to do that thing because that's not come from me.
But I think the personal therapy is really interesting because actually the more we understand ourselves, the better, they always say start with loving yourself, don't they?
Yeah.
And actually that's so interesting. So talking about how you've grown your business, then how do you know when you are in a place that you've got enough experience now to teach it? Because you've got to be ready to teach. What are the signs that you look for them?
I think one thing would be learning and living through kind of the transition from knowing something and being able to do it for and by yourself to then actually being able to translate that in a way that other people can apply and do. I think one thing to be careful of is that trend of like, well, it worked for me, so therefore it will work for everyone else.
Yeah.
That's just not the case.
Right.
When I say I teach a lot from experience, or a lot of my expertise comes from experience, that's not my experience of my business. That's my experience of I think it's over 1,000 now one-to-one clients who I've seen, and I'm always watching, I'm learning, I'm noticing, I'm picking up on things. And so I don't believe it's a case of like, well, I've built my successful business, so I'll teach you to do the same. Because unless you're building my business, that doesn't work. And also then that feels a bit like a pyramid scheme where we're all just building the same thing. Instead it's like, actually it's lived experience in so many different ways.
It's like a toolbox you've got.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are, many little qualifications and learnings along the way, but I think it's gathering all of that. And then I talk a lot with clients who are, building courses or programs, that actually there's a huge process in learning to teach. You can know something and know it really deeply and be great at that topic, but being able to teach it is actually a whole nother skill set. So that's where for me and for anyone that, I work with on this kind of stuff, I think experimentation, doing work for free, case studies is so important.
Yeah.
Like no one will pay me for something until multiple people have trialed that thing.
Right.
And the feedback has refined it and I feel confident in it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important to, uphold standards of service and also then to be able to sell something really confidently as well. I think it's a huge responsibility, people paying you for knowledge.
Yeah.
And I think that's a responsibility. Each of us have to work out how we take that on.
Yeah.
And not necessarily have the typical qualifications that other roles might, but have our own way of, I guess, monitoring things.
Yeah, it's really good advice there about no matter where you are in your business, if you're doing something for the first time, test it, trial it. You talk about data, talk about intentionality. So I'd love to know a little bit about how the transition happened. What did your messy middle look like? But also, how do we know, or how does an entrepreneur know when it's just the messy middle and it's going to get better versus it's time to give up?
I personally define that messy middle as like the gap between the idea and it coming to life in a sustainable, consistent way.
Yeah.
Right? It's that middle point from I'm going to do this to this is now working.
They were literally the words that went through my head. It's worked.
Yeah.
We've done it.
Yeah. And there's then a conversation, isn't there, of like, okay, well, that feels like that beautiful, they walked off into the sunset, happily ever after.
Yeah.
Then there's the fun of how do I sustain this and continue this, which is a whole nother challenge. But everything I've ever brought to life has had that messy middle.
Yeah.
Every season of growth has had that messy middle. And in answer to your question of kind of, I guess, how do you know it's the messy middle and not the, slow failure?
Yeah.
For me, it's consistency of action. I really believe a lot of people decide something's failed before they've given it the consistency of action to succeed. So they'll do something for a few days, a few weeks, and it's not working, quote unquote. And then they go, what? It's not working for me. It's failing. I need to give up. And actually any strategy, plan, idea, it needs consistency. It needs consistency to give you any meaningful data.
Yeah.
And so I work on minimum commitment periods. If I'm starting a new project, when I started my podcast, I said to myself, I have to do this for 6 months. I'm going to do it for 6 months. And even if the data 4 months in is telling me it's failing, I've got to do it for 6. And then I'll decide if it's working or not. It's not an endless, just keep chipping away. And in 2 years, you're still doing something that's not working. But it's finding that middle ground where you give something enough consistency. And then if you've given it the consistency and it's still not working, great, let's pivot. Let's change. Let's try something new. But it's finding, I call it that balance between stick and twist. Entrepreneurs generally have a tendency to either overstick or over twist.
Yeah.
And you've got to learn to stick for long enough, but then find that turning point where you need to twist if it's not working.
I mean, all sounds amazing. And then the question that's going through my head is how do you keep yourself accountable? What is your method?
No amount of stationery will keep you accountable.
Okay.
That is
I felt that.
an internal skill.
Was that a message to me?
Well,
Put away the highlighter.
I think we're always looking for like the secret. You've got to be honest with yourself.
That's
like
it. Yeah.
As a business, and I sometimes hear, people say, don't they? They're like, oh, some people aren't cut out to be entrepreneurs, or you're not set to be a business owner.
Yeah.
I think there's a real arrogance of like, we're these superior people. We're not. We just have different traits. To my partner who works in a large corporate company, I look at him and I'm like, you're cut different. And that doesn't mean better or worse. It's just different. I think though, the reason I'm saying that, one of the things that makes you a business owner is you have that real intense ability to be self-led, self-accountable.
Yeah.
You haven't got a manager, you haven't got a boss, you haven't even got colleagues. And quite frankly, I think if you can't be honest with yourself, a lot of things are going to go wrong.
Absolutely.
And I would never say that if you're not honest with yourself, your business is going to fail. But I think that be true potentially, because if you can't be honest with yourself, then you don't you're not accountable. You're not taking the action. And don't get me wrong, I love a scroll. You do not want to see my screen time on TikTok. I'm not saying I'm this perfect human, but my boundaries are, at least I'm honest with myself.
Yeah.
Like if I'm not seeing a result, I have to be really honest with myself of, am I even doing the thing that would lead to that result? And if no, actually amazing, because at least now I've seen what needs to change. The worst thing is when you're doing all of the things and still not seeing the result.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think that self-honesty and that ability to almost manage is really key. It's not easy. I don't think it's about doing it perfectly. I'm a big believer in just messy growth. I think we're always learning and evolving. And that's why things like personal therapy and looking after yourself, I think, is so key, because you've got to be in a good headspace to be a good business owner. And I can give an example of that even. I had a real panic moment over August, which doesn't normally happen. I'm usually fully switched off. But it was this random week, and it actually aligned perfectly with the day I was speaking to my therapist. And I said to her, like, I'm just feeling so anxious and overwhelmed about the business. And I feel like I'm coming back to something that's failing, and I feel really worried. And we unpacked it. And I realized at the core of that fear was actually just a realization that I wasn't doing the things I needed to be doing for the business to grow.
And that really comes across with your brand. How intentional was that? I mean, when you first started out, I guess being honest, it's something we can document. Obviously, social media loves a bit of transparency.
Yeah.
But you've continued that as your business has grown. And just recently, you documented losing £50,000 overnight.
Yeah.
What made you decide to document it?
Yeah.
And then what happened and how did you handle it?
Yeah, transparency's always been my biggest value, always been top of the list of the, values of the business. And I think that was born out of feeling really isolated And like I was failing in the first few years of the business. I wasn't in community. I didn't even really know there were other business owners out there. And it was quite different. 9-10 years ago, I genuinely remember the launch of the first ever membership. That's how long ago that was. And like how like established the online space was.
I guess the pandemic changed so much,
100%.
didn't it? But you're pre-pandemic.
Yeah. It was such a different time. Obviously pros and cons to that potentially, but I felt really isolated. And so I guess I started sharing the honest stuff as a form of kind of, please tell me I'm not the only one.
Right.
And then of course I saw the benefits of that for other people. And it's just always continued to be important to me, especially as the business grows. It's very tempting to start to get a bit more secretive and careful and think that, oh gosh, I've got to put the right, brand out there. And don't get me wrong, I don't believe transparency means sharing anything and everything.
Yeah.
And I also
it's curated, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so curated so that it's safe for me, for other people. It's not just, spewing thoughts online. It's helpful, but I think we need to remember that every business has its lows and challenges. And the more we normalize that, the easier business gets for everyone.
And is that the intention behind continuing to share it? Is that actually this is for transparency of businesses so that they know this is normal?
Yes. Yeah. I want to normalize that business is hard.
Yeah.
I really feel that a lot of the online space is built on people saying that business is complicated but easy. They say it's complicated because then they want to sell you some big thing that you have to learn from them that's overcomplicated. But I really believe it's the opposite. Business is actually very simple. What it takes to grow a business is simple. It's just hard. It's hard to keep doing it. It's hard to show up. It's hard to do all the things. And so I hope in sharing my business journey, the highs and the lows, I really try and show people the highs to be like, how worth it is this? How amazing is this? But also the lows of like, and here's what it takes behind the scenes so that people have realistic expectations.
For those that aren't familiar with what happened, could you like in a nutshell tell us what happened?
Yeah, of course. So I run a core program called On It. It's really the heart of my business. It's got over 150 people in it.
This is the membership that you run.
Yeah. It's a year-long program. It's genuinely magic. It's so simple. On your business, not in it. I love it. But that relies on people. Well, a lot of people choose to pay over the full year.
Okay.
And so I have a lot of direct debits in my business.
Sure.
And I also have a lot of direct debits from one-to-one clients, brand partnerships, courses, whatever. And I realized at about 10 p.m., I think it was back at the end of June, that all of my direct debits had been cancelled, which had come from a real fluke freak accident with my software where they thought that I didn't want my account anymore. I still don't know why. I can't be bothered to fight with them because that's not where my energy is going.
Yeah.
But yeah, all of that got wiped overnight. And so my business lost a lot of recurring revenue that was due to come in. And
then that would have impacted what you were needing to pay out.
Yes. Yeah. That's On It is my core of financially of the business. It covers everything every single month. That's why I built it in that way. And suddenly it didn't. And I had to work for probably, about 6 weeks. And then obviously August, we kind of started to wrap it all up, but a lot of work having to recoup that money and still a lot of money lost at this point.
What were the first actions that you took?
Probably about a 60-second, let myself be human and panic and be stressed.
Ask you if there was a meltdown.
Yeah, I really believe you're a human before you're a business owner.
Yeah,
and I know sometimes they can come across a bit maybe like clinical, but I really do feel the feelings of being a business owner. And I think you've got to feel it before you take action.
Yeah.
If any of my clients have a crisis, I'm like, you have a minute and then we'll talk.
Yeah.
Because have the minute, be a human. But I would say I think it gets easier with time. I've learned the hard way with challenges that like getting bothered by things you can't control only upsets you. And so I did have this moment after about 60 seconds of panic of just like, it's happened. I knew as soon as I saw what had gone wrong, I knew it was irreversible. So I was like, there's no point getting annoyed. There's no point getting stressed. There's no point fighting with anyone here. I need a plan. So it was the notes app of my phone. Like I said, it was about 10 p.m. at night. So I just wrote a quick list of like, okay,
these are the steps
we're going to need to email people. We're going to need to give people X many days. Yeah. Okay. And then arranged a meeting with my PA because I knew that she'd play a big role in it. Also understood the problem fully. So I knew the number, which was horrible to realize, but I was like, okay, that is how much money we've lost.
Wow.
And then went to bed. And then the next morning just started fixing it.
And who's the team that supports you then? What's your business support model?
Yeah, I've got what I think to be quite a lean team, at least based on what I've had over the last few years. I love being a company of one.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to be a manager. No one wants to be managed by me as well. I'm not good.
Really, Alice?
Yeah.
Okay.
I work really well with freelancers, experts that go and do their thing, but needing to approve someo's holiday or make sure that like, that's just
it's
not
responsibilities you don't necessarily
want. And it's just not, I'm quite an introvert. I don't love to chat all the time. So like when I've had team members in the past that are more employed, it's just the model doesn't really seem to work for me. So I've got a PA who's amazing called Charlotte. She works for me an hour and a half a day. So not actually a huge amount.
Goodness.
But every single day, hour and a half. I've got a editor who edits the podcast and supports with video content, an accountant, and then website and graphic designer freelance who do product design, everything else. But consistently, it's really just me, Charlotte, and Em, my editor.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is actually a really lean model, isn't it? For running, your core program on it, which has as many members as you have. And who does the delivery?
Me.
Okay.
Everything's delivered by me. And I've really intentionally continued the business model in that way.
Yeah.
I've had moments over the years where I've thought I could scale this.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't.
I mean, I guess the scaling comes from not focusing entirely on one-to-one and being able to have more and more people join.
Yeah, the diversification, building a program like On It, which took 8 years to get to. Like it was 8 years. I can track back every year of my business journey, what the learning that led to launching a program that was so successful. It was like 8 years in the making and then an overnight success with the launch. But yeah, I've intentionally kept it that way. And I think there's a lesson in that for me, but I talk about this a lot with my clients of like bigger isn't always better. My business could turn over more money. My business could be doing more, but I always think, and what are the trade-offs to that?
Yeah.
Like, what does that really look like? I think we have business model envy, but we don't really deep what is going on in someone's business model.
Sure. What do you think made your launch so successful? If you were to pick out one element that made it what you would define as a successful launch, what do you think it was?
It's the product.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with that. Like marketing is so obviously important and launch strategy and all of those things. But the offer was just spot on with what people needed and what they wanted from me. Like realizing that the biggest problem that people have in their businesses is not that they need to learn more or sit and, absorb more information or build another plan. They actually just need to take more action on their businesses.
Need to do it.
Yeah. They need to have more vision, set better goals, and take the action towards those goals.
Right.
Sounds simple, but it's not, right? Like working on your business, not in it, is what my whole job exists to help people do.
Okay.
And so On It was really just born out of that clarity. And I'd also say the simplicity of it. We overcomplicate things a lot and think that people need anything and everything. And I can do it, so I should. On It is so simple. It's literally one call a month. People want more, but they don't really want more. If I added more to it, it would lose the simplicity and the impact. And all of that learning and that clarity has come from the last 8 years of teaching so many different workshops on goal setting, on vision, on working on your business.
And seeing what works.
Yeah. And realizing that my one-to-one clients who are most successful, they don't have any secret. They just work on their businesses and they have bounce back. If they stop, they get back to it. So really On It was just my question of how do I solve that without people paying one-to-one?
How did you make people aware of it? What was the method that worked for you?
I really leveraged hype and secrecy, which I think if you're launching something new, always do, you know?
Yeah.
You guys do it brilliantly every year with the conference, right?
Right now.
Yeah, there's the like, who is this? And what's that silhouette? And what's it like? Lean into that. And so people were leaning in, right? Because they were interested. They're like, what is it that she's doing? And then from that, really just repetition of message, driving people to a wait list, getting a really sell via email. So getting people to email. I did a free masterclass as well the day that it launched to explain.
You did a lot of the traditional model.
Yeah, really. I'm a very I feel like I learned launch strategy in 2018 and I still do that today.
And what's your time period that you will do the lead up for and you will do a launch for?
It was probably about 2 to 3 weeks lead up.
Okay, it really is quite traditional in many ways.
Very traditional.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because with, I was seeing a lot of people talking about Alex Hormozi's like big masterclass that he had on the back of his book. And yet just a few months ago, people were saying, oh, that more traditional model doesn't work. So that's why it was interesting for me to ask, well, what worked for you?
I mean, I'm interested by like, gosh, if that's traditional, like what's everyone else doing? Like, what do I need to learn and try? But yeah, I think just doing what works and like flex, trying small new things each time. I did a kind of early bird price, which I hadn't done, trying things like that.
So all of this went into your book. How did it come about?
I was incredibly fortunate. And not fortunate in the sense of like, I was lucky, but fortunate in the sense of it wouldn't have happened if it weren't for this, that they approached me.
Okay.
So I got an email, it must have been back in June 2023.
Yeah.
They approached me and just said, look, we want a book on marketing. We want someone that is actionable, clear, whatever else. We found you. Would you write it? And I'd never thought I'd write a book. And then within about 2 hours of getting that email, I was like, I am desperate to write a book and I'm ready to go.
Well, it fits your strategy of ask yourself, have I done this before?
Exactly. Yeah. And I knew, I have friends that have written books and I was like, I know this will be good for the business. It will be the cheapest thing I'll ever sell. So how great to have something so accessible
for
other people. And also just thinking, right, well, let's give it a go. I want to learn. I want to see what a publishing journey's like. So I signed my deal towards the end of 2023 and then, came out in June 2025.
But is it true that you wrote it in 5 weeks?
Did my first draft in 5 days. It sounds a bit clickbaity, doesn't it? But no, I did, 50,000 words in 5 days. Not by choice. I just left it so last minute and hadn't thought about how to write a book.
That makes me feel stressed. Wow.
I was stressed on the Monday morning and by the Friday I was like, yes, this is amazing.
But isn't this weird how this fits with your whole sprint versus the definition of consistency?
Yeah, I know how I work well. And also I should add, it was a book that was knowledge that I had been teaching at that point for 7-8 years.
You make it sound easy, but to get it from your head onto paper.
Yeah. Well, I went to get a book deal, you need a detailed plan.
I see.
So I had bullet points. So I basically that week was sitting down and just going, right, what do I know about email marketing and selling via email? Right. Okay. What do I know about content and video? Write all of that. I think if I were to write another book, it would be harder because it probably wouldn't be that kind of just, here's all my knowledge, put it down. It did then take a few weeks to obviously edit and get all the visuals done. That was a big part of the process.
So what would you say if somebody is on a deadline and they need to get something done? What were the 3 or 4 things that you did that somebody could replicate that would help them?
First thing I'd say is break it down. If something feels big, it feels big. So it's not going to happen. Have a, really broken down plan. So you've got these mini milestones. I would then add to that, the second thing is you can then create these mini moments of dopamine and celebration. So because I had this planner on my office wall at the time that was every chapter and 4 or 5 sections in each chapter. And when I finished a section, I'd highlight that box. And that gave me that sense of momentum. Instead of it feeling like, well, I haven't written the whole thing yet. It was like, well, I've done that bit and then that bit. And, it's these kind of checkpoints. So you could actually
see yourself getting to the goal of where you needed to get.
It's why I think that you really should write things on your to-do list that you've already done to tick them off in the morning.
Do. Yeah, that's a great tip.
Genuinely sometimes write on my list like gym, shower, get ready. And I'm already at my desk and I've done those things just so I can sit there and be like, yeah, made it happen. And then I think probably the third and final thing I'd say is just knowing the little tips and tricks that work for you. I really believe in self-discipline over motivation.
Yeah.
But self-discipline sometimes takes a bit of a toolbox. So, things like turning my Wi-Fi off, throwing my phone across the room, telling everyone this is what I'm going to do.
That's what I was going to say. Did you let people know no phone calls in the evening or?
Yeah. I put a post out on social media being like, I need to write my book in 5 days. Well, and I'm sure my publishers probably saw it and had a hashtag.
Yeah. But you made yourself accountable to the public.
Exactly that. Yeah. And I think, those proving to yourself that you can exercise grit and get something done, I think is so important, because then when things get tough, the amount of times when I've been on a deadline, nothing will compare to that level of a deadline. So now when I've got to make slides for an event that I haven't done yet, I'm like, oh, it's fine.
It's all relative now, isn't it?
Yeah,
I've written a book in 5 days.
But I would say to anyone considering or going to write a book, feel free to write it in 5 days, but don't make that you have to hand it in on the Friday.
Amazing, Alice. I actually have, fascinating speaking to you, and I know I've literally, it's felt like my own personal, like, I need to know this information.
I love that. We've gone around so many topics.
Thank you so much. I actually have a final question. That what we do now is we're doing something called the atomic clock. So I'm going to put you under a little bit of pressure. I'm going to give you 60 seconds to answer a question that one of our audience has sent in. The question this person asked is, if you were starting again, knowing what you know now, what does somebody do in order to build a social media profile? What would this person do if they were starting from zero? So they don't have the benefit of the brand being known. Alice, 60 seconds. Let's start now.
Start by asking yourself the question, what opportunities do I want to attract, or what is it that I want to actually achieve or sell? And then ask yourself, what would my reputation need to be for those things to happen? Get 51% clarity. Don't expect to feel ready, and then work out a few key topics, talking points, things that you could talk about in order for that reputation to happen. 51% clarity again, don't wait for it to feel ready, and go for it. Post as often as you can, look at the data, and have that minimum commitment period. Until you've given it 2 to 3 months, don't decide that it's failed. Keep taking the action, keep evolving and experimenting.
Okay, and we've got 20 seconds left. So what content should they be putting out?
I don't know why my brain's gone blank. Just because I want to sell at anything that they are passionate about, interested in, think about, know, like start interesting conversations, put your thoughts and opinions out there, tell stories, anything that could be somewhat relevant to that reputation you want to create, give it a go. Until you've done it and it doesn't work, you can't tell yourself that it's not going to work. Try it.
Amazing. Alice, it's been honestly such an honor to listen to you. You are truly, truly inspirational. And I can't wait to see what the next part of your journey is. If you were to take one brave action from now in your business, what does it feel like it would be?
It would be to put content out that feels reflective of what it is that I really want to be known for. Thank you so much. I've loved this.
Thank you. I've loved having you here. Thanks, Alice. A brilliant conversation with Alice Benham. Is a business strategist, but she is really someone who shows you what happens when you keep yourself accountable, when you are truthful to yourself about where you are and what you're achieving in business. But what was great about this interview is everything she spoke about, including her sellout launch of her membership program through to, getting a publishing deal and writing a book in 5 days. What Alice does brilliantly is she is very much about breaking down what you need to achieve into realistic actions. And that's why she's had over 1,000 one-to-one clients. And to have had that level of success at really a relatively young age, I think is truly down to how perceptive she is with what the data is telling her, what the insight is telling her, and why she's been able to achieve the level of success that she has at just the age of 27. Thanks so much for listening to Don't Work Harder. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe and share. This show has been brought to you by Atomic, the home of epic business growth. Head to our website at atomic.site to hear more about our business programs and epic events.